North. Many thanks for joining us on Weekend Express. We also have a governance expert, Kevin Osido, and Mark Bichachi, political analyst, and last but not least, Ndindi Nyoro, Member of Parliament for Kiharu. Many thanks for joining us on Weekend Express. So let's begin with us making headlines on the Sunday Standard this morning. And on the front page there, internal wars top IEBC agenda in crisis talks. And this has been a big story for the rest of the week. Let's begin with page 4 of the paper, because I understand that today IEBC commissioners and senior secretariat officials will be meeting to try and heal the rift within the electoral body, but as well as tackle operational issues ahead of the repeat election. And just before we get to what those operational issues are, let's begin with you, Mheshimiwa Nyoro. The rift within IEBC has been discussed in great detail, most of it coming within the IEBC and not from political players, so to speak. What do you make of the division that has played out in the public?
I think from my part is a lack of leadership, especially from the chairman, because the chairman was the returning officer in the presidential vote. But ever since we conducted these elections, and of course the verdict from the court, he has found solace in shifting blame to the other juniors. So for me, I think it's lack of leadership, and we need to see more kind of leadership from him, because we cannot expect to have this kind of ruggles as we go towards this very important event, and even thereafter. Therefore, he should keep his house in order, and the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility, rests with the chairman, and especially when we are talking about the presidential vote. And
we've heard that a lot. Wafula Chebukati should keep his house in order. But we've seen him write that 12-point letter to Ezra Chiloba, and many said that is Wafula Chebukati keeping his house in order. But then we're seeing him getting a lot of criticism from the Jubilee side, saying he's just trying to shift blame to the others. Bichachi, what do you make of this, and is Chebukati on the right track?
Wafula Chebukati is in a catch-22 situation. He's doomed if he does and doomed if he doesn't. And there are two particular points that we need to consider. Number one, there's a very high likelihood that there will be criminal implications to the ruling that will come out from the six-judge panel. And if that is the case, then this becomes an individual matter. It becomes, will I survive this criminal case that is coming? The second thing is the biggest challenge for IEBC going into the ballot on the 17th is, will they be seen as independent? Will they be seen as pro-Jubilee or pro-NASA? Or will they be seen as independent? And that task is very difficult for Chebukati, because whether you like it or not, there are certain people and certain systems that you will need to correct based on the ruling that was made. So whether he likes it or not, there are certain people that he will have to take action against. So the middle ground is a hard place for him to find. But that being said, he also needs to remember that there will be a third person on the ballot in October 17th, and that person will be the IEBC. Kenyans will be looking to see that are they able to deliver a credible election, or will we again see a situation where someone will be able to go to court and then we are voting again in 60 days time from October 17th? Those are the questions that they need to answer.
All right, and you take a look at page 6 of the paper here. The headline is IEBC crisis. Chebukati walks narrow path of Kenya's toughest job, and many have billed this as Kenya's toughest job, really. But still on page 6, there's a small box there showing what Chebukati now wants to be done ahead of the election. Part of that is having a new project team whose fate will be sealed today in that meeting they will be holding in Naivasha. But most importantly, he has ordered for the opening of servers in the presence of international observers and representatives from the major political parties, something the Supreme Court had ordered initially but was not able to be done. In your view, Kevin Osido, is Chebukati, is this an IEBC chair trying to put his house in order?
In my view, Michelle, Chebukati has to. He has no otherwise, because look at it this way. A few days before, in fact, it was about 100 days to elections, the ratings of IEBC were very high in the public opinion. And we went to the elections, people had lots of expectations, and in my view, I believe that IEBC delivered what Kenyans expected, hence the high opinion ratings. Now, the Supreme Court ruling, indeed, in my view, also presented lots of issues which probably were not very open to the eyes of the public. And given that the Supreme Court process was also a public dialogue, I think that the chairman has to, in many ways, present the commission as one, independent. Number two, a commission that is going to be able to deliver the expectations of Kenyans, and not just Kenyans who are then voters, but also the political party players, because you know that these are the people who've been more or less forming the narrative that is even informing how the public is looking at the commission. The third thing is the memo that the chairman sent to the CEO. I note in many of these institutions, there are systems that have to be put in place. The CEO is in charge of operational daily running of the commission. The chairman is in charge of decision-making processes. When the petitioners went to court, they did not petition the CEO. They petitioned the chairman, who was the returning officer of the National Tallying Center. This, therefore, presents the fate of both the commission and even the chairman. Because, again, you know that the chairman was not just picked from the streets. There was a seriously meticulous process within which the chairman of the commission was picked. And the public was also given the opportunity to present petitions. And I remember there was this MP, I think he's from Kajiado, Memusi, who was the only lone voice who said, at the end of these elections, there are going to be serious problems with this chairman. And I think that now, Michelle, we are back to that point. And therefore, what this means to me is, even as much as the IEBC chairman is trying in all means possible, including this meeting that they are going to have in Naivasha, to be able to put his house in order, he needs to be very, very clear in the sense that Kenyans expect a free, fair, credible, and accountable elections come October 17th.
Honorable Arati, initially, the opposition had a problem, first of all, with the team that Chebukati had put in place to seemingly steer the October 17th general election. The fate of that team will be sealed today. But part of the agenda today will also be the matter of who will print the ballot papers and which institutions will be providing services during the voting, tallying, and transmission of results. What are you expecting from this retreat in Naivasha today?
Michelle, my colleagues have just said a number of couple of things. I want to just point out that yes, Chebukati could be in a in difficulties, but I want to just single out that Chiloba is the CEO, and he has been every director reports back to Chiloba, not directly to the commissioner. And that's where now has been the problem. Today, when you're talking of who can take responsibility, by the law, it's Chiloba. But indeed, Chiloba, I think he overlooked the intrigues, that he left all the powers with the CEO, who is now at the center of controversy for everything that is running up in the commission. But we expect it so much that we expect that God will intervene in all these excesses, because indeed is the country at stake. Therefore, for us to be able to have this stalemate resolved in Naivasha retreat, but more of to say of Aruglai, the printing farm in Dubai. We know Aruglai is a farm which is related and does business with the family of Jomo Kenyatta as a family. We know the same team, through their branches, collect rent in Dubai for the family. Therefore, when initially we said that, yes, these are people that we don't have confidence in what they're going to do, and that's why we saw more borrowed papers in the country, other than the ones which were ordered, being marked. Two of them, some people. If you get it to some, even in my constituents, there are people who are given 2 borrowed papers. Now that even there is other more borrowed papers found in Zit Kariako Social Hall, this indicates that indeed there were so many borrowed papers outside there. But what you're saying is that we are not going to accept, as NAS, we are not going to accept another monkey business from IEBC. To take us through the Aruglai.
Yeah, so what is your solution? What would NASA suggest, or where would NASA suggest that the ballot papers be printed?
We may not have direct control of where it's going to be printed.
But you do have a say.
But we have a say, and the say we have to put it clear is that they cannot go back to that farm, which we know that it has linked with Mheshimiwa Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
And of course, Wafula Chebukati says that he either wants the ballot papers to be printed locally or by a different firm other than Al Ghurair, singling again the very massive divide within the IEBC, because if you take a look at page 7 here, the headline is Chiloba in battle for confidence. And Chiloba's position in this entire issue is that he wants the original team that handled the botched polls led by himself to remain in charge of the next election. He says that electoral systems are already in place and there is no need to interfere with the operations of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Mheshimiwa Nyoro, what is your position as the Jubilee Party on this?
For me, I'm just smiling, listening to my colleague, Mheshimiwa Siba Arati, because the issue about printing of the ballot papers is actually the list of the issues they have. Even before we went to the polls, they've had the issues, they've taken every process through litigation up until the time we had the elections. And even after the elections, they found it wise not to listen to the Kenyan people, and again went again to the courts. My advice to NASA, and I think this is our position, and we have exhibited it very blatantly by going out there to look for votes, is that the processes, however they are, will not add anything, any figure, any number to the ones you have. The only thing that can add numbers to any political party or any coalition is going out there and talking to the electorate. And that is what we are doing as Jubilee. And we have left CORD to do, I don't know, CORD, NASA, ODM, we have left them to do all manner of checks and balances in quotes, which they purport to do, as we, of course, go out there to do what is needful at this particular moment.
All right.
And I am, Michelle, from where we sit, we will not be surprised if Siba Arati and the other ODM fellas call a press conference tomorrow to complain that there is so much cold, and therefore we need to postpone an election to a time where the weather is more conducive, because they have a litany of issues which we know definitely, and we have repeated this many times, is that the NASA coalition or ODM, whatever you call it, they have never been ready for elections because they know they don't have the numbers.
Right.
And we are telling them,
Michelle,
keep calling press conferences, keep doing what you are doing. People of Kenya will speak very loudly on the date set by IEBC. And from there, we are not going to entertain any other nonsense from ODM. Once the people of Kenya speak, that is the voice that will be followed. We are not going to go into a circus and circles without an end.
All right. So just before we delve into anything else, let's first listen into what the party leaders have had to say, because both Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga have had a lot to say about the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and its independence there to speak. Let's listen in.
Hatuwezi kuchukua mbuzi wetu kupelekea fisi ya chunge. Fisi anaweza kuwa mchungaji wa mbuzi? Ataweza? Chiloba hawezi kuwa mchungaji wa kura zetu.
Raila Amolo Odinga, kama wewe huko tayari kuingia kwa debe ambayo inasimamiwa na tume huru ya uchaguzi wa Kenya, weka kando, sisi tuende Kasarani, tuapishwe, tuendelee na kazi ya kujenga taifa letu la Kenya.
So two things. One says they will not go to the election with Chiloba as the CEO. On the other hand, you're being accused of not being ready for this election. Simba Arati, where do you stand?
You see what even what the president says is that he wants to be taken to Kasarani to be sworn in as the president. One, we are dealing with a bunch of thieves here. With, you know, the president, the deputy, the likes of those ones who surround them, who don't believe in democracy. And that's why they made it possible that all system and the process, you know, they are refusing. Let us go to the numbers. Let us go to the numbers, not the system, not the process. And we're asking, do you just get to get a baby without getting pregnant? There is a process. You must go to the clinic. You must be, you know, you must be given some medicine for. What we are talking about is that we are dealing with students, all pupils, who have been taken through the process of stealing, blatantly, you know, stealing, and they don't care. These are the people. Even yesterday when I was looking at what the deputy president was talking about, the academic credential of Raila Amolo Odinga, you are kind of, today you have an iota concern of education, whereas you are stealing even the land of small children at primary school. There is this common, I don't know if it's true, there is a common knowledge outside there where Mama Abby, who got Abby at 16 years, because Abby claims to be at 27 years. Therefore, if you minus, when they must have met with William Samoei Ruto, the girl was at 16 years. Therefore, these are, they are killers, they are thieves, they are rapists. You know, it's
all right. Let's leave that because he's not here to defend himself. He's not here to defend himself.
The team that we cannot even have a day in government, if indeed we had moral standards we have to stand.
All right. Let's hear from Bichachi, please.
Let me just tone down the rhetoric from the two Mheshimiwas and remind them, and this is the problem with this campaign period, we keep forgetting that after you win an election, you have to govern and win a nation. Let's not just have individual fights and forget that we need to have an agenda for this nation. And the funny thing is that both Jubilee and NASA are correct. The quantity and the quality of an election is what determines an election. The divorcing of the two is an act of futility. You cannot say that I will have a good quantity, but I had bad quality. You cannot say you have good quality and you have low quantity. The reality of the matter is if we are sober-thinking Kenyans, and I can tell both of them for free, there's not a single Kenyan today who wants an electoral process that is flawed. And there's not a single Kenyan today who wants a president who won by minority. So the fact of the matter is, Mheshimiwa, Kenyans want a quantitative president. And that president, they want them from a qualitative process. This is what we must understand. There is a middle ground. Kenya does not always have to be polarized based on our politician stance. There's a logical stand. And what we want a process that is credible so that the majority winner can win.
All right, and that's a very interesting explanation. But let's hear from, I beg your pardon. Senior, please.
Michelle, the country is seriously polarized. And if you note the undertones of both sides, there's a side that has a feeling that what we went to court to get, we got it. And there's this other side that is saying we were played within the judicial process. Now, what, in my view, these two narratives present is a point at which Kenya is looking for leadership. Kenya is looking for that same voice. Kenya is looking for that voice that is going to ask for more or less a platform that is standardized, a platform where everyone is the same, a platform where everyone is equal. Because if you look at these two big heads, they command almost an equal percentage of this country. And when this says whatever they are saying, there is a side that is being appeased. And when this says whatever they are saying, there's a side that is feeling really left out of this country. Now, we have less than 38 days, ceteris paribus, for the next elections. How this is going to play insofar as making this country one, which is my biggest concern, is very important. And Michelle, I have said, and I'll continue to say over and over again, that I'm still looking for that day when a dialogue will take place between Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga and Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta. Because even in this turmoil, even in this, at this stage when we feel that there is nothing that we can pick out of this process, there is still that something which can make this country different. And the Supreme Court already took us through that process. And if we can be able to just stop and think and reflect on what the Supreme Court said, because in my view, I think that if the IEBC and all these political players can just look at the issues that were raised by the IEBC and take time to reflect on them and fix our gaps, then we will definitely get it right. But if we want to continue to polarize a nation like this, I don't think we're headed to the right direction.
Honorable Nyoro, and even as Osido speaks of fixing gaps, that are pointed out by the Supreme Court, it is important to note that the Jubilee Party said they do, they have accepted the decision of the Supreme Court, but they do not agree with it. So what changes, if any, would the Jubilee Party want made before the next election?
Even before going there, Michelle, I think this issue of saying about Kenya being divided into half, quality versus quantity, to me is a fallacy that is premised on nothing other than emotion. Because once you go back to the Constitution, you go back to the why we go through an electoral process, we go there so that we are led by the majority, even as we listen to the minority. And therefore, we are not going to the polls on 17 to look for, on who has what numbers. We are going there to look for the person who will garner the majority of votes. And we are ready for that. And listening to Mheshimiwa talking, and even my two brothers, I am surprised that they think Kenya is divided into two halves. Because we have seen even the people who were in darkness before, like yesterday we were with Mheshimiwa Dolo, we have seen people, almost all the leaders from Western, the former Western province, we have seen almost all the leaders from the Eastern province coming and of course joining where Kenyans are, and it is in Jubilee. And therefore, what we are asking as Jubilee is that once we go to the polls on 17th, we are not going there to measure who has a bigger fist or who is bigger than the other. We are going there to elect the person who will get the majority of votes. Even if the difference will be one vote, that is why we are having an electoral process. Right. And therefore, Mheshimiwa, I am telling you so that you ufikisha hii message kwa wakubwa yako, that it doesn't matter the number of votes that Raila Odinga will get on 17th. What we are going to, on 17th to do is to elect the person who will get the majority of votes. And we will not allow to have people who are losers joining government on the behest and pretending to stand for anyone. We are going to follow the Constitution. The person who will garner the majority will rule. But of course, hatutawacha nje sana. We are going to listen to what you have to say so that we implement what is tangible and what helps the people of Kenya wholesomely. Right. And Michelle, if you look to what we've been doing for the last 4.5 years, the same Maendeleo in my constituency in Kiharu is the same Maendeleo in Sibarati's constituency, the same in Bodo, because us, definitely, when you talk about polarization, we are the people who are trying to unite. But as we try to unite, Raila Odinga is on the other side, trying to divide the country, trying to put wedges, which will not allow anymore. All right, and we'll come back to those political realignments we've seen with, in the past few rallies. But Mheshimiwa, and even as you answer that, perhaps tell us, because NASA has been accused of not being ready for this election. What are the exact issues NASA once dealt with before the October 17th repeat polls?
Michelle, if elections were to be called tomorrow, we were leaning, because indeed we won the elections. Other than that, our brothers, the Jubilee, because they don't believe in anything. They believe in, they believe in stealing. That's the only what can comfort them. That's what makes them feel good. Not even live about the elections. Stealing anything that they can come across. Be it space of land, money. If we start from the NYS scandals, we come to Eurobond, 215 billion. We're talking of, these guys, they're talking of that they are ready, for the schools to have exams. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta said, actually he put us, a stop into an employment in the public service. Today he's talking of that he is ready for the children to graduate and get their jobs. Which jobs that has he created as Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, other than the railway line that now, which is running to Nairobi and from Nairobi to his own farm in Naivasha. Right. Therefore, what we are saying is that today we are ready. We won the elections on 8th, and we will win the elections, be it on 17th or 24th. But you have said you will not go to the elections on 17th until certain conditions are met. What you are saying is that if we are going with the Joloba, we can't take our sheep into a shepherd whom we know he will be killing, get one slaughter and give to the hyenas outside there, because it's full of, it's a den of, vultures, hyenas, who don't, there is, I'm sorry to say this before all the panels here and the national TV, that, any man would want to have love with a beautiful woman. But let this woman ask that, go and wash my bra, all my underpants. All right. These men will run away. And this is Jubilee, which has defiled the country. If today you ask them to fix the problem we are in today, they are not ready. They are telling us, we're going to rule you guys for other 20 years to come, and will continue stealing from you.
So is NASA's problem just Chiloba sitting on that position?
Chiloba,
What
another
else
thing
does
is
NASA
that,
want
the
to go to
system,
this
we want the servers to be opened. Of course, we want to be told what happened exactly. Those ones who messed up, let them be taken to court.
Michelle. Just a minute,
all right,
please.
let me come to you, Mheshimiwa.
All right. I am surprised listening to Mheshimiwa repeating thieves. But and it's like he's a saint or like he has evidence of what he's talking about. The thieves in this country are known. Look at his coalition, what they call principles, starting probably with the list, who is this senator of Bugoma, Wetangula. The fellow stole an entire, our entire house out there in Tokyo. Yote imetoshea kwa mfuko yake. Going to Kalonzo, even before there was NYS scandal, Kalonzo had already stolen land belonging to NYS.
I'd like to stop you. I'd like to stop you
Michelle,
just there, very
just a
humbly,
minute.
because this very issue has become the problem
Just a minute,
of pointing fingers
Michelle.
as to who is more
It's because
corrupt.
he has talked about it, please, kindly. And even going to the same issue of NYS and youth. Leave alone even a kijana stealing. The whole money ilitoshea kwa mfuko ya mzee mmoja in the name of his presidential candidate. And after they did all that, one of their principles stole even where our people go to rest after wakiitwa na Mungu. They stole the whole cemetery.
Let me come to you.
Therefore, it is good that we talk about the discussion that brought us here, because definitely Sibarati to have no moral authority to talk about the issues we are talking about.
And what we are seeing from these two leaders here, representing these two political parties, what we need to be seeing from our leaders.
Michelle,
the reality
just
of the matter.
You know you've got it into a market.
Let's hear from Bichachi.
If you just allow me my time, let me tell you, if there is anything that convinces a Kenyan not to get into politics, is that the history of Kenya is understood very differently by a NASA politician and by a Jubilee politician. We erase what we don't like and remember and highlight what we like. This is the problem with our country. Number two, as a people sitting in front of a national TV station, we need to be talking about how to move our country forward. The politics of us versus them, of Jubilee versus NASA, NASA versus Jubilee, will lead us absolutely nowhere. Because whichever party wins, that person will be president of the person who voted for him and the person who didn't. So what is the moral high ground? The moral high ground is this, that we want credible elections, fair elections, accountable elections for Jubilee. We want fair elections, accountable elections, credible elections for NASA, because at the end of this process, what we want is the sovereign republic of Kenya, of whom the people are supreme. So the reality of the matter, what we are seeing in this campaign, we've removed agendas from our campaign, and now a NASA rally is a Jubilee shaming rally, and a Jubilee rally is a NASA shaming rally. The reality of the matter is the shame is on our politicians, because instead of pointing fingers at each other, can we sit together and come up with a solution? Because I tell you, if we mess up October 17th, Kenya will be in a crisis, and then it will not be NASA and Jubilee.
All right, let me hear from Osido just before
I want to pick up from where...
No, just a moment. Let's kindly just hear from Osido. He's been quiet for a while. I will come back to you, Mheshimiwa. Osido.
Michelle, two things. One, to whom much is given, much is required. And sometimes, and I have lots of members of parliament who are friends of mine across the board. And sometimes listening to them, Ndindi Nyoro tumekuwa naye kwa platforms mingi sana
Kweli.
to try and bring up economic reforms to this country, both at national and county levels. Mheshimiwa Arati, legal reforms and parliamentary processes. And sometimes I ask myself, do we really learn? Because now when we want to begin to sing to the tune of appeasing the people who are out there, we are not helping the process.
Yes.
Number two, I believe that Kenya and Kenyans deserve better. And there are so many people who would wish to get into parliament at both national and county levels. But just by virtue of how our elected, I'm not saying appointed, elected leaders behave. Because there are certain basic minimums that Kenyans look at. And that's why they said, for Dagoretti constituency, Simba Arati is the Simba. For his constituency, Kiharu, Ndindi Nyoro is the right man. What are these basic elements that Kenyans are looking for? And once you have been elected into office, please present them so that we can be able to, all of us are young people, you know. There's a time when there will never be Raila Odinga. There's a time that there will never be Uhuru Kenyatta. What kind of political history do we want to build? What kind of political narrative do you want to pick up from? And in my view, looking at the manner in which Kenyans were able to vote in this election, regardless of all the irregularities, when a 23-year-old is elected into the Senate, I feel joyful because I know that Kenya is beginning to change. You know, when that young lady is elected into that constituency, I feel there is something fresh that is beginning to happen. So we must not necessarily peg ourselves so tied into the chains and the wrangles of both Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, because there was a time when they were. And right now, it is our turn to be able to begin to change this process. And how we are going to do it is how we fix the problems that were picked up from this.
Honorable Arati, very briefly before you go and break.
Yeah, I just want to pick one, item that my brother Bichaji said, and it's important. I agree with my brother here that one, we are the country. But if you check with our President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, who is the caretaker at the moment, of course, he has no much mandate to run the business of the country, but he's the caretaker. When he went to Mombasa and told those guys, otherwise you guys, you didn't vote for me. Therefore, he goes to Rift Valley, says there are two communities who voted for us, who fought 207, and you know now we are together. But I can tell you, the fightings of 207 affected every Kenyan. It's not two communities. Therefore, when we have a president who has decided to divide the country into two, that's where the problem starts from. Is the father, he should be able to know how to lead the country. Is the same person who asks us, you guys go to court. When we go to court and we have gotten the verdict from there, he abuses the judges. Therefore, we are saying, yes, it's our time, but what we want is that the person who has been given the responsibility, even if it's for one day, lead as if there is no tomorrow.
All right. Gentlemen, let's take a short break. It is now just about 25 minutes to the top of the hour. You're watching Weekend Express on KTN News. We'll take a short break now, but do stay with us. When we come back, the conversation continues. We'll also be posing some of your questions, many of them coming through from the hashtag Weekend Express KTNs to our panel here in studio. Do stay with us.